I was genuinely glad to see Cooper with a smile on his face at the end of the episode because he'd worked so incredibly hard to improve his life from every angle. His career was finally taking off, his relationship with Ariana was in a great place, and this murder charge was the one thing that threatened to undo all of that progress. But now the season finished with Cooper being named president of his own company, CTT, and his relationship with Ariana being stronger than ever. It felt like a well-deserved happy ending for a character who's been through absolute hell this season. Now let's talk about Angela and Ainsley because you know what? I come on here every week and complain about these two characters, but fair play to Taylor Sheridan because they actually felt like they had real purpose in this finale. Ainsley's entire college arc, her journey of repairing her relationship with Pagan, and them both understanding that they can be friends, even though they're completely different people, that all landed really well. The realization that they just needed to communicate with each other instead of letting assumptions and judgments get in the way was a nice message to have at the core of the character's development. Plus, when you paired that storyline with Angela almost mourning the loss of her child's youth, it created something genuinely emotional. Angela was watching Ainsley grow up and prepare to move away from home, and she felt like she was losing a limb. There was going to be this emptiness inside of her once Ainsley left, and that's a feeling that any parent can relate to. A child leaving the nest is one of the most bittersweet experiences a parent goes through, and giving Angela a story that had real substance like that was exactly what the show needed to make her character more relatable and interesting. Angela wasn't just shopping or hanging out with the elderly neighbors anymore. She actually had meaning and depth to her character. I also thought the moment when Angela found out that Tommy was fired was incredibly powerful. You could see genuine fear in her eyes and her worry that their lives were about to fall apart like they did in 2008 cut through the screen. That vulnerability made Angela feel real for the first time all season. She had purpose, she had stakes, she had something to lose. So I really hope that we get to see more of this version of Angela in season 3 because this is the character that the show should have been giving us all along. When Angela has real emotional stakes and real concerns beyond surface level problems, she becomes a character worth investing in. This finale proved that she can carry meaningful storylines when the writers actually give her something substantial to work with. Now let's talk about my overall thoughts on this finale, because I thought this was easily the strongest episode of Landman Season 2. If there's ever a time to deliver your best episode, the finale is absolutely the place to do it, and this episode delivered in ways that the rest of the season failed to. I do feel like this season was pretty poor overall, and there wasn't nearly enough action or genuine stakes throughout most of it. But the risk present in this final episode, the feeling that Tommy could quite literally lose everything he'd built, added a level of intensity to the show that it desperately needed from the beginning. In terms of performances, Billy Bob Thornton delivered his absolute best work as Tommy Norris across both seasons. I completely bought the emotion that was present within him. The stress levels, the desire to prove himself one final time, the hunger for that rush that Cammy accused him of never chasing. This is exactly why Billy Bob Thornton was cast in this role. His performance felt so real and so raw that you couldn't look away from him. Every scene he was in crackled with energy and authenticity. I also thought Rebecca was performed brilliantly in this episode. It's funny how when Charlie Newsome isn't in the picture, she instantly becomes a better and more interesting character. The fierce, sharp tongue that she wielded in that interrogation room, the way she put genuine fear into the law enforcement officers, that wasn't just entertaining to watch, it was powerful. I've been waiting all season for Rebecca to adopt the personality traits that made her character so compelling in season 1, and it finally came roaring back in this finale. So yeah, I was extremely pleased with how her character was handled here. I did think it was a bit of a shame that Cammy wasn't in the finale more than she was. I really wanted to see the company actively sinking around her, but instead it was mainly just insinuated that MTX was going down. CTT oil exploration and cattle officially opened, and the crew that we've been following throughout the entire show made their choice. They left MTX and joined Tommy. Every single one of them, it was a better deal for them across the board. They'd make more money, their futures would be secure, and they'd be working for someone who actually knew what he was doing. This wasn't just Tommy getting back on his feet, this was Tommy building something bigger and better than what he had before. He wasn't just surviving his firing from MTX, he was thriving because of it. And on top of his professional success, we saw Tommy connect with Angela in a way that we haven't seen all season. He listened to her. He saw her as the person she actually is for the first time. Angela wants to make the small moments in life memorable, and Tommy finally understood that. It was a genuinely tender moment between them, and it showed growth in Tommy's character that felt earned. Then came the final scene, and it was perfect. Tommy saw the coyote, the exact same symbol of death that came for him at the end of season 1. But this time, Tommy didn't run from it. He looked at it and said, "You can't have today. Today is mine." And then he walked away. That moment showed us that Tommy won. Death didn't win. His life didn't crumble when Cammy fired him. He rebuilt it into something even better. There was also this beautiful visual symmetry in the way the episode ended. Tommy walked back toward the house as the sun was setting. The day started with him watching the sunrise from his father's spot, looking defeated and lost. It ended with him walking away from the sunset, victorious and in control of his future. The sun was setting on the day, and it was ending in a completely different way than it began. That shot was powerful, and it perfectly captured Tommy's transformation across the episode. But while Tommy's story had a triumphant ending, there's still the question of what happens next with Cooper, and whether his murder charge is really gone for good. Cooper and Ariana's storyline in this episode was intense from start to finish, and it added another massive layer of stress to Tommy's already overwhelming situation. Following on from Ariana being brutally attacked in the previous episode, the cops came down hard on Cooper for defending her. The guy that attacked Ariana ended up dying after Cooper hit him 17 times, and now Cooper had a murder charge hanging over his head. This wasn't just some minor legal issue that could be swept under the rug. This was serious, and it was threatening to destroy everything that Cooper had worked so hard to build. Not only was this adding to Tommy's stress as he desperately tried to figure out how to sort the situation out, but it was also putting enormous pressure on Cooper himself. His entire future was on the line, and the cops were treating him like a cold-blooded killer. But then Rebecca entered the scene, and everything changed. This was the Rebecca that I've been talking about wanting back on our screens for weeks now. Rebecca was brought in as Cooper's lawyer, and her entire presence in that interrogation room was absolutely incredible to watch. Her speech about being a life ruiner was delivered with such precision and power that it completely shifted the dynamic in the room. The delivery was just perfect. Seeing the cops getting put in their place by Rebecca transported me right back to season 1 when she was at her absolute best. This was the fierce, sharp-tongued Rebecca that made her character so compelling in the first place, and it was refreshing to see her back in action. I did find it a bit strange that the detectives were being so aggressive with Cooper, considering the evidence clearly showed that the man tried to attack Ariana and Cooper was just defending her. Yes, the man died, and Cooper went into overkill mode by hitting him 17 times, so it was obviously serious, but the way the detectives were judging Cooper, acting like he was some cold-blooded killer who got enjoyment out of beating someone to death, felt a bit over the top given the circumstances. Tommy ultimately stepped in and used his knowledge of how the system works to get Cooper off the hook. He mentioned to the detectives that if news about the case got out to the public, the people of the county would most likely turn against the police force for going after a young man who was just defending his girlfriend from an attacker. Tommy pointed out that the mayor would probably fire members of the police department to save face, and that threat was enough to make the case disappear. The murder charge against Cooper was dropped, and he was finally free from that nightmare. Twist of the entire season, and it completely flipped everything we thought we knew about Tommy Norris on its head. After 10 episodes of what's been honestly a pretty underwhelming season, this finale went back to the show's roots and gave us the best installment we've seen in months. It had action, it had real stakes, it had genuine threat, and it had Billy Bob Thornton delivering what might be his most powerful performance as Tommy Norris yet. The ending showed us that Cammy was quite literally captaining a sinking ship, while Tommy, with his family at his core, was about to build an empire from the ground up. And that final scene with the coyote, it changed everything. So let's dive into this ending, break down what it all means, and I'll explain exactly how this is going to impact Season 3. This is Landman Season 2, Episode 10, Ending Explained. Just so you know, this video will contain spoilers. This entire episode belonged to Billy Bob Thornton. From the very first frame to the last, he carried this finale on his shoulders and reminded us exactly why he was cast in this role. The episode opened with Tommy sitting in his father's spot, watching the sunrise, and for a moment it felt like we were about to witness Tommy give up completely. It almost looked like he was adopting TL's mindset, that mentality where life is just passing you by and you're essentially waiting for the end to come. This came directly after Cammy fired him from MTX, and honestly, in that opening shot, it felt like Tommy was broken. But here's the thing, Tommy Norris doesn't break. What Cammy said to him when she fired him, those words weren't crushing him. They were motivating him. They lit a fire inside of him that we haven't seen all season long. Tommy wasn't ready to retire or fade away into some desk job somewhere else. He wanted one final run at greatness, and he was going to take it. The plan was brilliant in its simplicity. Remember those wells that Cooper found, the ones that MTX had absolutely no idea existed? Tommy was going to drill on that land. He was going to open his own company, CTT Oil Exploration and Cattle, which stood for Cooper, Tommy, and Thomas. The entire world had missed this opportunity, and Tommy saw it clear as day. But starting an oil company requires serious capital, and Tommy had just been fired. He needed someone to front him the money, someone who believed in his vision and his ability to execute it. That person was Dan Morrell. Now, Cammy had thrown Tommy under the bus when she fired him, but Tommy flipped that situation completely. He went straight to Dan Morrell and told him the hard truth. Cammy's Louisiana project was going to fail because she had no idea what she was doing. She was gambling with everything the company had, and Monty would never have made that play. Nate summed it up perfectly when he told Cammy that the company was never supposed to outlive Monty. That line hit hard because it was the truth. With Monty gone, MTX was a sinking ship, and Cammy was the captain going down with it. People were abandoning her left and right, and she'd put all her chips on Louisiana, a massive risk that went against everything Monty had built the company on. Tommy saw this collapse coming from a mile away, and he used it to his advantage. He went to Dan Morrell and asked him to honor the original deal that Morrell had made with Cooper. Tommy offered Morrell the 50-50 cut that Morrell had wanted from the very beginning. And here's the key thing about Dan Morrell. He always believed in Tommy. That's why he backed Cammy in the first place, because Tommy was working for her, and Morrell trusted Tommy's instincts. So when Tommy came to him directly, Morrell didn't hesitate. He backed Tommy and gave him the money to start CTT. But there was a threat attached to that money, and it was serious. Morrell told Tommy that if he tried to screw him over, Morrell would come for the thing Tommy loved most in the world. And we all know what that is. It's his family. That threat hung over the entire episode like a dark cloud, and it added real stakes to everything Tommy was doing. There was a stretch in this episode where it genuinely felt like everything was going to collapse for Tommy. Cooper got charged with murder for defending Ariana. Angela found out that Tommy had lost his job. The backing from Morrell felt uncertain, and then that car crash happened on the freeway, and it almost felt symbolic. Tommy's life could be taken away in the blink of an eye. He was pushing himself to the absolute limit, gambling everything on this one final shot at success, and the pressure was crushing him from every angle.